Warning: the following video contains personal opinions and may contain potential bias. Anyone sensitive to someone else's opinion may want to turn away now. But thanks for watching anyways. I just hope that everyone gives this game a chance because it deserves it. It honestly, if nothing else, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee justified its own existence, in my eyes at least. But I'm curious what you guys think too. Well, I suppose it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't what I wanted. Okay, Mankey's Paw, I wish for a Generation 8 Pokemon game. One set in a region based on Spain, with a fire-type starter based on another animal from the Chinese zodiac. And I wanted to be open world, with a gym leader for every type, with new Mega Evolutions, new regional variants, over 100 new Pokemon. And I wanted to be one game, no more just two version junk. I want move tuners right away, and let's not forget no motion controls or dumb gimmicks either. And so help me, that has functionality with Pokemon Go. And on top of all of that, dear Arceus. Darn it, Game Freak! This isn't what I wanted at all! You have to help me. We have to save Pokemon Sword and Shield before it's too late!
What do I look like, a game developer? I am but a humble merchant.
So you can't help me? But you're the one who gave me the Mankey's Paw in the first place, and things have only been getting worse and worse!
What's done is done, but perhaps I can recommend a video to watch instead.
So, with all of that said, welcome everyone to the Silver League's Top 10 Hopes for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Number 10. A Scimitar Oryx Pokemon. Yes, I've mentioned it before, and I'm going to mention it again here, because darn it, the Scimitar Oryx is one of my favorite animals of all time, and I would absolutely love to see a Pokemon made out of it. Something about the fact that it can kill a lion with its horns, as ironic as that is to say given how much I love lions, really endears it to me. It would make for an awesome steel fighting type, not that that's already been done a couple times now, or normal fighting, or normal steel, or some combination of those three types I really think could work out and, well, it could be fun. I think it would make for an awesome sweeper type Pokemon. And hey, this is one of the more lighthearted and admittedly selfish hopes that I could have on this list since, well, it is something I actually want to see one of these days, so why not hope for it in this game? Even though it really wouldn't make that much sense for there to be a Scimitar Oryx Pokemon in a place like the Galar region given what it's based on. But nevertheless, it's a hope, darn it. A hope that I'll always cling on to, until the day that it eventually happens. Number 9. Can Meltan please be obtainable in this game? Meltan is a very strange Pokemon when it comes to considering its place in history with the Pokemon franchise as a whole, because its initial reveal in Pokemon Go really was one of those invigorating moments that truly felt like, say, the first time that I personally saw Donphan in the first Pokemon movie. It got people talking, it got people excited, it was technically obtainable in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, including its much sought after evolution, Melmetal. And I, to this day, am still not over the fact that I was denied an opportunity to get either of those two Pokemon because my phone, despite not being that old, all things considered, and able to play Pokemon Go just fine, was not compatible with communicating with my Nintendo Switch, and thus, I couldn't get either, forcing me to scrap my plans to use both throughout my Let's Play, and overall just, come on. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were very weird games as well, because they're core games, but they can't interact with the actual core games, and it'd be a stretch to say that it has an actual competitive meta. It has one, but it's more of a prototype than anything else, and more circumstantial than, well, anything else. But that being said, we've been clamoring and waiting for so long to see how Melmetal would fare in an actual competitive environment. And I would find it very peculiar if Meltan and Melmetal aren't in Pokemon Sword and Shield, Because while on one hand, it would cement that Meltan was indeed the third mythical legendary Pokemon of Gen 7, it would also mean that a lot of fans were basically denied an opportunity to actually use Melmetal within a proper competitive format. And that really would suck, especially for me since I've been waiting so long to actually have a Melmetal. So here's hoping that something in Sword and Shield alludes to Meltan, and I hope it's a bit more elaborate than what happened with Zygarde in Sun and Moon. The Zygarde cells were cute, but in some ways, the nature of how Meltan evolves into Melmetal would make the occurrence of a similar event in Sword and Shield actually not seem all that out of place. Well, here's hoping at least. Number 8. Expanded and equally good character customization options. So we already know that character customization is in the game. I don't have to worry about that. But 2 gens later, with 4 sets of core games that offer character customization, I'm often left with the exact same complaint. Why do female characters get so many more options than guys? To me, it's ludicrous that girls in some cases get literally 4 or 3 times more options than guys do. And it's just like, why? I'm just saying, as a guy here who wants to make his character look as close to, say, Silver August as possible, I would like to at least have the option to make a customizable male character with longish hair. Maybe not shoulder length, but you know, just longish? Please? And I mean, look at the Mii Maker that we've had since the Nintendo Wii. Male Miis can have the female haircuts as well. So I don't really see the issue here if it would just at least give the guys and the gals equal number of options. Skin tone is not a slider yet, which still kind of sucks, but please. Equal opportunity for both genders when it comes to character customization options. That's all I ask. I'm hoping that's not too much to ask for. Please. Oh, and I will fully admit, I would be totally down for DLC clothing options. I keep saying every time, you could totally do DLC outfits referencing Ash's clothing over the years within the Pokemon anime, or just other characters throughout the entire Pokemon franchise. There is a gold mine of nickel and diming that you can do, and I personally would totally be okay with it. I'm letting you do this. I'm letting you take my money. Just please give me the options. Number 7. Less Gen 1 pandering. Look, I know I just said you're sitting on a gold mine to basically exploit Gen 1 nostalgia, but for the love of Arceus, can we cool it with Gen 1 already? Literally since Gen 6, we've had this problem going on. X and Y basically gave you 2 starters, the Kalos starters, and then for some reason, you're just given a Kanto starter, of your own choosing too. Yeah, I know it was for the Megas, but go figure which trio starters got Megas, and not the ones of that generation. And then we jump to Gen 7, where regional variants, this simply amazing idea that would allow you to repurpose any Pokemon you wanted with a new typing, rearranged stats, and a slightly different look that actually makes sense within the logic of nature. And literally, the only Pokemon that got the Alolan treatment are Kanto Pokemon. It's bad enough that I worry that you're going to abandon this amazing gimmick, but please, for the love of Arceus, stop with the pandering. We get it. Kanto's where it all started. We gotta respect where it all began. But literally, the longer this franchise goes on, the more new fans will be coming in who may not have even been born when the Gen 1 games first came out. They can't appreciate Kanto because they didn't grow up on it. So for the love of all that is holy in the world that Arceus crafted in the Pokemon universe, can we have less Gen 1 pandering? What the fuck is the champion of the Galar region doing with a Charizard? What? That better be alluding to some kind of gimmick you haven't revealed yet as of this recording, or I swear to dear sweet Arceus that someone who is not me, though maybe me, is totally going to freak the flip out of Number 6. An evolution of the Pokepelago. So, on to something a bit more positive. As much as I and many others did prefer the bottom screen functionality that we had in Gen 6, I gotta say I actually really like the Pokepelago. Now, I know a lot of people loved the Pokepelago early on when there was a glitch a lot of people could exploit to get around the whole time frame thing that was initially supposed to be the main point of the Pelago. I personally liked using it the proper legitimate way because it was an easy way for a busy person like myself to both EV train and even hatch a few eggs and grow some berries without having to technically lift that many fingers. Now, it wasn't impossible to EV train in Gen 7, but I will say I pretty much exclusively only use the Pelago to ever EV train, except for the rare occasion where I just needed a Pokemon right now, and, well, it was easy enough, but truth be told, that's mainly the reason why I never made a video on how to EV train in Gen 7, because the Pelago was simply more efficient to me. You could train multiple Pokemon at once, and it gave you a nice little daily routine to check up on, and you got a ton of rewards for it. Realistically speaking, the Pelago is not going to be in Gen 8. It just doesn't make sense because thematically, it clashes. But I would like to see the idea of the Pelago evolve into something else that we see in Gen 8. Something of a similar concept where you can leave your Pokemon in this place for a set amount of time and it would train them while you went and did your own other thing since you have your own busy schedule and can't play this game all day long. Yes, I would love to see the return of bottom screen features like Super Training from Gen 6, but I don't know if we're ever going to see that. I just want to see an evolution of the Pelago because it really was a smart and just really well done idea that kept in mind the busy lives that we all have, or in some cases people's short attention spans, and just makes good use of people's time and made it all the easier to EV train Pokemon. Overall, I liked it and I just want to see it return somehow. And as someone who firmly believes that ideas don't die off, they just turn to something else, I have good faith that the idea of the Pelago will return in Gen 8 as something else. What will it look like? I have no idea, but all I can do is hope for the best. Number 5. Good online options that aren't Let's Go's. Hey there, Pokemon Sword and Shield. Buddy, pal, guy. I know you've been put through a lot lately since E3. You've been getting a lot of hate. Some would argue deservedly so, while others would say it's probably been a bit much at this point. And while I do have my own opinions on the matter, I just want to say, from one fan to the franchise, if you have Wi-Fi options that at all mirror that of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, I swear to Arceus, I will use the fur of both of those mascot legendaries to weave a rope to hang you by your neck. We have friend codes. Why on earth would we use this? Why? Do you know how easy it is to mess around with this? Do you have any idea how hard it is to stream when anyone can use this password? Literally anyone in the world can coincidentally use the exact same password and suddenly you're battling someone else who isn't your intended opponent? Oh, and there better be a verse recorder. And we better be able to pass these codes to each other. Oh, and one more thing. If the time limit for battles is 20 minutes, I swear. Because for Let's Go, it's fine. It was a smaller dex. It wasn't supposed to be a competitive game. But 20 minutes? Yes, you could have a full battle in 20 minutes, but it would actually have an effect on the meta. Stalling out would actually be a viable strategy. It would severely hamper a lot of people's ability to enjoy the competitive side of Pokemon. And with all the hate you got going on already, if you mess with the Wi-Fi options, if you screw this up, you'll lose even me. You hear that? You'll lose even me! It's bad enough we lost the PSS! Wait, what? Wycom? Huh? Oh! The Wycom sort of functions like the PSS. Huh. Well, alright then. All is resolved! Unless you give us a bloody 20-minute time limit. I swear to Arceus! You give us that time limit, I'll have your head! Number 4. Give us a sense of exploration. For as much as the Pokemon franchise as a whole seems to love to pander towards Gen 1, there's one aspect of Gen 1 that seems sorely missing when it comes to a lot of the modern games, and that's the sense of exploration. It's funny to think that after a certain point in the Gen 1 games, it actually kind of became open world. Somewhat. One could rightfully argue it was more sequence breaking than anything else, but nevertheless, there was technically options to explore a few of the gyms in any order you chose. But even ignoring that happy coincidence, a big charm of Gen 1 was the general freedom to just explore and discover, to go off the beaten path and just find what awaits you. The power plant in Gen 1 is technically completely optional. You didn't have to explore that. But if you got Surf, went off the beaten path, and found the plant, you could potentially be rewarded with a powerful Zapdos. Little things like that really made Gen 1 feel special, and one of my favorite aspects of the Sinnoh region in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum was that the regional map kind of sent you whipping all over the place. It really did further the idea of exploration. Gen 5 is unfortunately where I argue the maps got very simplistic, because Gen 5 was pretty much a line to an extent, or at least the visual was kind of boring. Kalos also had a map that didn't quite offer the grandest sense of exploration, and the Alola region, while beautiful and feeling full of life, was a region I very much felt like it was on rails at times. So with things like wild areas in the Galar region, there is hope for at least some areas within the game to offer a vast sense of exploration, but as of this recording, I don't think we really have a firm idea of just how vast these areas actually are, and even ignoring that, I would like to hope that the rest of the region still contains a sense of exploration that isn't completely restricted to basically walking down a path to get from city to city. It's a small detail that I really do miss in a lot of Pokemon games, and it was one that I admit I did feel just a little bit in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but again, I would love to have the ability to just explore the world and see what's out there, and just have that sense of freedom. I'm not asking for Breath of the Wild, I'm just asking for a sense of wonder and exploration, and just imagining what's out there, being able to see it in the distance, and actually go there. That, I think, would be pretty cool, and very on topic for Pokemon. Number 3. A balanced competitive meta. Oh boy, here we go. Yep, this is where it begins, folks. I know a lot of you clicked on this video expecting my opinions on these things, and guess what? Number 3 onward, it's all this. Oh boy. Oh boy. Where do we begin with this one, huh? Well, here's the thing. I predicted and called a lot of what happened when it came to the announcements at E3. For the longest time I said, stuff is going to happen that may upset people. Now, I said we should be prepared, and a lot of people are probably going to get angry at things they are going to announce, because if I had to be perfectly honest, Pokemon as a franchise is bloated. It's very bloated. Elements of it are incredibly imbalanced. Look at poor Smogon trying its hardest to make a balanced meta out of everything it's got to deal with as of Gen 7. And even look at VGCs and see how often it's a cluttered array of mirror matches. And I'll be the first to admit that I got bored of Gen 7's meta pretty quickly. For a while, I felt legitimately burned out on Pokemon, at least from a competitive standpoint. And it's the same reason why I fell out of love with Yu-Gi-Oh! The game simply got bloated. Even Cardfight Vanguard, a card game I enjoyed for a long time, ended up feeling bloated and just, I had to back out of it. But Vanguard did the smart move of hitting the hard reboot button so that way it could have a nice entry point for newcomers. I legitimately think in my heart of hearts that Pokemon needs that reboot. A lot of people forget that Gen 3 was the hard reboot, partly due to the shift in hardware, but it was also an opportunity to completely revamp the engine and give us a system that actually works. But since then, the game has added more and more and more, and now there's just a lot of fat that needs to be trimmed off. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee proved, if only as an experiment, what a competitive meta would look like with a self-contained pool of Pokemon to choose from. Now, it wasn't perfect, mind you, because let's be real here. The idea of Stealth Rocks being in the game, yet no way to get rid of it, is a complete joke. That is just a total farce if nothing else. But it did make various changes to moves, and what Pokemon learned certain moves that felt like it was tailored for the idea of a meta within these two self-contained games. And in that regard, it kind of worked. Again, it wasn't perfect, but it was at least a stepping stone with the idea of a self-contained meta. Yes, it sucks on sheer principle that we can't have every Pokemon in the game, but it's also something we saw in Gen 7, which also didn't have a national dex. Sure, you can still import every other Pokemon, but if they can knowingly tailor moves and movesets to create a very healthy and, more importantly, varied meta, where just about every Pokemon is viable in some way, shape, or form, then I think they might have something. At the very least, I'm willing to give them a chance to see what they can do on a bigger scope. because Let's Go proved there is merit in the idea, and at the very least, room for improvement. So if this is something that has to be done for the various reasons that one could come up with, at the end of the day, I just hope it pays off with a meta that ends up being very fun and very enjoyable to play. Because I'll repeat myself just one more time, I got bored of Gen 7. There are moments where it got very enjoyable. It's still entertaining to watch on the Silver League. I just ended up preferring to use the Pokemon that I actually liked for the Pokemon themselves and not how they actually play competitively, because it just didn't feel all that engaging. There isn't really much else I can add to that. I just hope that Gen 8 can reinvigorate that passion for battle that felt kind of lost over the course of Gen 7. It sucks, but, well, it'll go into my next hope. So, let's get to that, shall we? Number 2. Just be a good game. Just be a good game. Just be a good game. It's a hope that I've had in other videos like this, but it always rings true in my heart. No one wants a game they're looking forward to suck. There is an audience of people who do legitimately enjoy bad video games. I occasionally could find amusement in a game that's so bad it ends up becoming good, but that in itself is a very niche market. Pokemon Sun and Moon, in my personal opinion, was a good game. It was well put together, and overall it was quite the enjoyable experience. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, however, is perhaps, in my personal opinion, the worst pair of core games the Pokemon franchise has ever released. It felt lazy, it felt underhanded, and of all third versions, it felt like the most blatant cash grab they've ever put out. This put Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee in a really tough spot. For months, there was hate upon hate leading into its release, and even I wasn't feeling too keen on them. But then, when the games came out, it turns out they were a lot of fun. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was exactly the kind of game I needed in that moment, because it reminded me that Pokemon games are fun, that they're enjoyable, and I legitimately had a real good time playing it. It was a proper, well-built, well-structured, well-thought-out RPG, and it was fantastic. So I would never want anyone to go into Pokemon Sword and Shield thinking, this is gonna suck, this is gonna blow. It's one thing to keep your expectations low, but it's another to go in basically wishing for this thing to be bad just to validate your own negative opinions towards it. Me personally, despite all the bad press surrounding Pokemon Sword and Shield, despite the fact that no matter under any circumstances, no one can truly justify or say that not having every Pokemon in the game is a good thing. It is universally bad, it sucks, it's unfortunate, but I don't want that to be the reason why people think this game is bad. If the game is good, even despite the fact that it doesn't have every single Pokemon in it, it should be able to stand on that merit alone. That's why I personally, as much as it pains me to not have every Pokemon in the game, I still want to give it the fairest chance possible. There's a lot of things going against it, a lot, but I don't want this game to be bad. And I'm not going to be in denial if it's bad either. If it plays bad, if the story sucks, then that's something I will fully own up to. But at the end of the day, we should just be hoping that the game is as good as it could possibly be, even despite all the factors going against it. The initial trailer looked pretty good. There were some things I was a little worried about. And after E3, after seeing their second trailer, I would say that what I saw was an improvement compared to the initial reveal trailer. As for the live E3 demos, that's a whole other story, but all of it just makes me think back to Pokemon Sun and Moon when gameplay was first shown off at E3 during the year when it was due to come out. The E3 build of the game didn't even have Rotom decks yet, and we didn't learn about Alolan forms until a few months after that E3 showcase. So there's potentially a lot that's yet to be seen when it comes to Pokemon Sword and Shield, and in that regard, I look forward to it. But at the end of the day, I don't want this to be a bad game. I want to enjoy my experience playing it. I simply hope that it's a good game. That said, you might have noticed that this is my number 2 hope for Pokemon Sword and Shield, when oftentimes this is the last note I leave on, as per the traditional pattern of these kind of lists where I talked about my hopes for an upcoming game. Well, in light of everything that's happened recently, another hope of mine has cropped up on top, which usurps even my own personal hopes that this is a good game. So, let's talk about that. And my number 1 hope for Pokemon Sword and Shield is that everyone learns from this. I just want to say right now, before I begin this ramble, however long it ends up being, that if you felt upset, angry, sad, frustrated, insulted, or even betrayed by the news that's come out of all of this, you aren't wrong. Nothing I'm about to say is here to contradict how you feel or tell you that how you feel is wrong. Because those feelings are a feeling that you have in your heart. They are completely valid. And this can also apply to people who are happy about this, who are hopeful, who heard the news and thought, good, the game is bloated, trim the fat, get rid of the things that were just cluttering the meta. I'm sick of Landorus, I'm sick of Tapu Koko. This or that. Every single opinion across the board, from all sides, is equally valid, and none of them are wrong. You can go back to some of my streams, and you'll hear me talking about what I think might happen in Gen 8. And among the things I said was remarks to the effect of don't get attached to Z moves because there's something that Game Freak could very easily take away, if only because of how much work would be involved in maintaining them over the course of every single game going forward. I also admittedly made the mistake of assuming Megas would be safe because those CG models exist and they already have them and all they'd have to do is, well, update them, but nevertheless, I still kind of called it. I predicted that people would be upset, that people would be angry, because in my personal opinion, Pokemon needs to change. And change doesn't come easy. I hate change. I hate change so much. But it's something you get more and more used to as you get older. It's unfortunate, it's frustrating, but it's a process that happens in life. But then of course there's the speculation of why, the excuses being made. And the thing is, a lot of the excuses being made, or at least the excuses being thrown around, are patterns of something that I've seen since Gen 6, that I've seen for years. And they're observations that I've pointed out in a lot of my videos. And the main issue comes down to time. Time has been a cruel factor that's been making Game Freak struggle pretty much since the shift to 3D. Because if you look at Pokemon X and Y, we had, in my personal opinion, a fantastic meta, but it did come at a price. We had to date the smallest number of brand new Pokemon within a given generation, the fewest legendaries, and frankly, a story that was incredibly lackluster, with a massive and inexcusable exposition dump at the very end of the game that pretty much dumped all the plot that could have very easily been spread out over the course of our adventure. And then there was Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the remakes that I swear we as a fandom basically willed into existence because there was no real reason for those games to be remade, and yet they did, but at the same time, it feels like that game suffered for its level design because there was a lot of reused textures and kind of lazy mapping. Overall, it was still a good game, but it didn't quite have that same pizzazz that, say, Heart Gold and Soul Silver had, which are honestly some of the best remakes period in video gaming if you ask me. And then we saw a year where there was no Pokemon video game released. This presumably would have been where a Pokemon Z might have existed, but instead, the year after that, we got Pokemon Sun and Moon, which gave us a breathtaking view of the Pokemon world on the 3DS. Environments looked absolutely gorgeous, and we were no longer chibis. We had fully realized CG models for the human characters, and it was fantastic. Sure, the main character in real-time cutscenes displayed zero emotions in times where he really should have had at least some kind of expression, but this is where the sacrifices of Gen 7 came into play. Because while the roster of brand new Pokemon, including Alolan forms, was a lot more substantial, especially compared to Gen 6, we paid for the breathtaking environment and a vastly improved story with a region map that was very small, broken up by a plethora of load screens, and a story that frankly felt like it was on rails, and even worse, was not even our story to begin with. It was Lily's. And then you have Ultra Sun and Moon, which came out literally the next year, that stripped away a lot of the deeper things that made the original Sun and Moon so special, and replaced it with cardboard cutouts and a very, very lazy Necrozma story. And then the year after that, we had yet another remake of Gen 1, but with tweaked gameplay that took cues from a mobile game. Let's Go in particular stood out because it felt like there was a lot of effort put into that game. But that's the thing, a lot of these Pokemon games were coming out annually, and it doesn't feel like Game Freak simply has the time to craft these worlds, to make this story, to balance out the competitive element of the game, and keep this series going on what is basically an annual basis. That is the issue at hand here. Before the shift to 3D, it was a lot easier to turn out these games quickly, if only because pixel art is a way easier medium to design for, and things were simply on a smaller scale. They were on proper dedicated handhelds. But now, not only have the Pokemon games shifted to 3D, but they're now also shifting to HD, to what is technically supposed to be a proper home gaming console. While it's also a handheld, that weird hybrid nature of the Nintendo Switch still puts Pokemon Sword and Shield in a very weird place, and in my personal opinion, it feels like the development cycle that Game Freak was working under for the longest time has finally caught up with them. Every single Pokemon game they've released since the shift to 3D has had some sense of sacrifice going on. Some aspect of each game paid the price for what is effectively an annual release schedule. And with Pokemon Sword and Shield, it feels like in order to meet a 2019 deadline, they had to cut Pokemon from the game, since every single Pokemon is having its CG model tweaked, even if it's ever so slightly, for the reality that, well, Dynamaxing as a gimmick, yes, the Pokemon is getting bigger, but I've done enough design work to know that you can't just stretch a model bigger and expect it to look just as good. It doesn't. It would require a brand new model, even if it's just the smaller one blown up bigger and then heavily refined after the fact. But that's the thing. It all comes down to time. And I don't like sitting here feeling like a know-it-all who basically saw all this coming, and now everyone else around me is basically realizing the problems of Game Freak's production schedule. Because I predicted this, and I was unfortunately right. But that's also why no one is wrong for feeling this way, because it's a perfectly valid feeling. And it's why my number one hope for Pokemon Sword and Shield is that everyone, we as a fandom, but also Game Freak themselves, learn from this. I legitimately think that Pokemon should be just one set of core games per generation, and I think we need to go back to 4-year production cycles, if not 5 years now. Because the nature of the hardware, the graphics, the scope, it demands time. Think about this. When Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon was announced, everyone, okay, not literally everyone, but the biggest and loudest voice I heard, aside from why isn't this Pokemon Stars, was why isn't this on the Switch? And then the E3 of that year, there was that frankly embarrassing video made where they announced, hey, we are working on a Pokemon game for the Nintendo Switch. It was something that was painfully obvious to me, but it was so embarrassing that not even halfway through Gen 7, they had to announce we are already working on Gen 8 and we have nothing to show yet. Basically, Pokemon Sword and Shield has effectively been in production for potentially 2.5 to 3 years if at that point they had nothing to show yet. And frankly, Pokemon Sword and Shield does look like a game that's been in production for that long. Yes, people are complaining like they want Breath of the Wild, but the thing is, Breath of the Wild was in production for potentially 5 to 6 if not more years. And I know a lot of people want that, but a big problem was that we as a fandom didn't give Game Freak that sense of patience. And again, I'm not blaming anyone for this, because at the same time, Game Freak most likely proposed to Nintendo, or vice versa, that Gen 7 would be a 3-year generation. They planned that 2019 release, and pretty much everything behind them was following this same expected schedule. The anime, the cards, the worldwide tournaments, the merchandising. Pokemon is a multimedia juggernaut that simply can't delay the games on a whim. And while they have said they have no plans to patch the game, chances are the reason why they have no plans to patch it is because by the time Sword and Shield is out, they're already going to begin production on Gen 9. And again, the problem lies in the schedule, the timing. These games need time. No matter how many people they hire, it simply needs time to make a good game, to design good Pokemon, to think up ideas, to finalize them, to realize them, and to make everything work, to make it a good RPG that could bring in newcomers, satisfy casual consumers, please the hardcore fans, as well as make a multiplayer component that not only works for fans who make up their own metas, but also makes, more importantly, their official stage, the VGCs, look both entertaining and enticing, since that's their way to advertise what is effectively their esport besides Splatoon. There's a lot of things going into Pokemon, there's a lot of things going on here, and unfortunately, we've hit the ceiling. And this isn't a case for doom and gloom either. It sucks now, but the thing I'm hoping for is that we learn from this. This hope still applies to Sword and Shield because I want this game to serve as a lesson to everyone involved. Whether it's the fans or those developing the game, I want people to learn from this experience. Because I've already made a tweet expressing how much I hate #BringBackTheNationalDex, because I think it severely undermines the reality of the time crunch they're under and how, as I've said, things need to change. Pokemon needs to change. Because the Silver League community is my second family. Thanks to Pokemon, I've met so many important people in my life, so many friends that I love and cherish to no end. And I'm scared that I might lose a lot of people who are truly, truly important to me because of little things like the fact that we can't have every single Pokemon in this game, but not necessarily the others. It's been made painfully clear that fans want every single Pokemon in these games. There is no doubt they are aware of that. We shouldn't be spamming every single bit of their social media forever and ever and ever and just never letting go of that anger. Because that anger is a poison that'll just hurt you and your ability to enjoy the things that you used to love. The Pokemon that you cherish will always be there in the Gen 7 games, the Gen 6 games, in whatever game you have them on, minus the GBA games where when the battery dies on those cartridges, yeah, those Pokemon are gone forever. But nevertheless, your Pokemon are safe. I get why you're upset, and once again, you are not wrong. Your feelings are completely valid, and the most I can say is I've been aware of the problems for years, and I know it's a very tough pill to swallow, but I'm hoping that in time, you can see that this was a sacrifice that had to happen in order to meet demand, but if nothing else, we can teach ourselves and others, and especially Game Freak, patience. That it's okay to wait, that we're willing to wait. The sheer amount of stress I got from trying to basically comfort people who were dealing with all this anger and raw emotions in relation to hashtag bring back the national decks actually made me properly sick, like really, really ill, and just, it resulted in a lot of fights that I did not enjoy, and like I said, I don't want to lose my Silver League family over this. And I just hope that we can all learn to overcome this and enjoy these games and hope that they're not bad. At the end of the day, I just want to play a good Pokemon game. I want to have fun. And above all else, I want to have that fun with you guys and share that experience as I have for the past 10 years. Well, perhaps he had a point here or there. Maybe. But darn it, I'm still not happy about it. Curse you, Game Freak. This is the last time I wish for anything.